Ranged. Not rangers. Ranged in general is the current issue we have in Dark and Darker. Why fight in melee combat when you can do over half of somebody's health with one crossbow or longbow shot to the chest? We don't need headshots here, those are too difficult to hit. We just hit in the chest and we do over half of somebody's health. Really? When you still need to close the gap on the enemy to even touch them? That's not really fun gameplay. To me, the PvP in Dark and Darker is at its funnest during melee combat. The intricate dance of dodging and spacing and timing, it all just works very well for a fun, enjoyable experience. You know, except when barbarians pop their built-in speed shrine, and then they can just walk into your face and hold M1, no, that's not that fun. It's simple, but there's depth to it. It's not overly complex like Chivalry or Mordhau. I mean, not that Chivalry is very complex, but Mordhau, you get what I mean. It doesn't try to do too much at once. It's not very wide, but it's deep in simplicity. Rangers aren't the problem, because there are fighters with crossbows, bard crossbows, even rogues with handbows or wizards count as ranged classes, if you play them like that. If rangers get nerfed next patch, people just move on to whatever's the next best thing, whatever's strongest. Just like they moved on from rogue after that class got gutted. People in any game will do what's easiest, and it's the developer's job to make sure that the easiest option is still fun for everybody else. The biggest problem is that there's always some sort of annoying or unfun meta going on, and some of these metas still haven't been nerfed. People just found something better and moved on. Barbarian still tops Highroller kill leaderboards, and that's just a buffball cleric spam healing meta. So that's from forever ago. There's been no changes to cleric spam heal. That's the intended class mechanic. Fighters being able to easily get max physical damage reduction from green and blue armor. And then you have the cleric spam healing, so you effectively had to deal like 2,000 physical damage if you wanted to kill them through all that healing. With bards, we got the death ball meta, stacking movement speed, armor rating, swing speed, debuffing your enemies. Bards were for a long time just considered overpowered by the entire community, and it just made the game unfun. Not to mention that they had magic damage that could go through walls and floors, and still can, but you know, it did a lot more damage back then. Just recently, we experienced rogues with a 60-second invisibility and just being able to one-shot anybody, wherever they were. And now, the current meta, ranged damage, is just the best option at the moment. You're safe and the enemy isn't. There's no risk and there's all reward. Why wouldn't you do it? It makes melee classes pretty much useless, and you know what? Fuck them. They think they're better than us ranger gods. Shouldn't have taken away our lockpicking minigame from Bear Traps. The issue with Dark and Darker is meaning that there's some kind of meta going on at all times that makes the game feel unfun and unfair if you don't also play meta. If you're not the meta class or the meta team comp, unless you have a huge gear discrepancy or you are much more skilled than the other team, it just doesn't feel like there's anything you can do. You just get bulldozed over the consequence of wanting to play the class or team comp that you want to play, and that's just not fun. There are a few other reasons why I think the player base is going down and stagnating instead of growing and gaining more and more, but they're more so opinion-based compared to the previous point, but I'm still going to go over them. The devs of Dark and Darker, Iron Mace, seem to think that a game being in early access gives them free reign to make a bunch of tests and experimental changes that aren't always good. Unfortunately, early access really doesn't mean anything. The game is out. You can buy it, you can play it, and you're not going to get your access to it taken away. From a game's population perspective, that's full release already. The changes made at this point are going to drive away the population, maintain it, or make it grow. On a big new update, you can get like a resurgence of old players and maybe a couple new ones in, but like if the update's not good, not as many people are going to stay once they do come back or once they do buy the game. And if we ever get another rogue situation where people are just completely 100% burnt on it until the next patch, people might just stop playing entirely. Most of my friends already have. Most of these changes that I'm talking about are fairly small and they're not deal breakers on their own, but over time they just kind of add up on each other into one more annoying mess. One of these changes that I personally think is the wrong approach to take to an issue is capping the movement speed in response to gameplay being too fast, faster than the devs originally wanted. Don't get me wrong, I agree, the game was way too fast and it still kind of is, but The way that they went about it just isn't it. Let's take what you would expect to be the slowest class in the game, Barbarian. The #1 priority of a Barbarian gearing up is going to be movement speed. When your gear is good enough, plus Speed Shrine, you have a shout that gives you an on-command 15% move speed, basically an on-command shout. Speed Shrine, whenever you want. And a Wizard Hasting, you can easily reach that 350 move speed cap. So think about that. An equally geared Rogue, the class that you would expect to be the fastest in the game, cannot be faster than that Barbarian, who is supposed to be the slowest class. That just doesn't feel right to me. Personally, I think that lowering the move speed bonus that you can get from gear or agility stats or all attributes, or nerfing the buffs that you get from Speed Shrine or Wizard Haste or whatever, or Bard, would have been the better option here. No matter what, people are going to complain about it, but I just feel like putting a movement cap just isn't right. If you squish the move speed down to reasonable numbers, rogues would still thematically and logically be faster than a barbarian if they have equal gear and equal buffs on without hitting the cap. Next, there's bandages only healing temp HP. Just kind of makes you more reliant on a cleric, and I mean, it's more of a personal issue that I take with it. It doesn't help that this change happened when PDR fighters were meta. So every team that had meta had a cleric in it to spam heal their fighter, reducing their downtime between fights to 0, which is a slap in the face when the devs intended it to make downtime between fights less trivial and more cautious overall. Meanwhile, the at that time meta comp didn't have any of that. Also funny is that the devs intended to reduce the pharmacy bag meta, but now instead of bandages you just have a ton of potions, so pretty much no difference. Highroller costs 100 gold right now. For a full team, that's 300 gold. I just don't think that the rewards are worth the risk in Highroller right now, unless you're already super geared and you can clear the whole map and every other team in the server. Because unless you are those guys, chances are you'll just get farmed. This is going to mean that more teams are going to bring their best gear into regular lobbies. So people trying to play regular lobbies just are going to get bulldozed. This is going to lead into my next point, the 1 to 15 lobbies. They're noticeably less sweaty and more fun than the 15 plus lobbies. And before this change, the lobbies weren't really geared people. They were usually maybe greens and a blue or two. Now, the regular lobbies, 15 plus, are filled with the Highroller rejects. The moment a new player hits level 15 and they leave the beginner lobbies, they're going to be hit with a sudden huge difficulty spike. They're going to get farmed over and over, and they're just going to wonder why the game is less fun than it used to be, and they're probably just going to quit. Moving on from that, we have gear rarity, making gear even easier to acquire in the most recent patch. What's the point of having a fresh wipe when there's tons of people with purple and blue gear in the Goblin Caves on the first day? Even worse, with the addition of, there was at first purple gear and the weaponsmith and armor, now there's only blue. But even the 1 to 14 lobbies are going to be facing this problem. When a new player joins, they get steamrolled by somebody in blues in their gray gear, defeating the whole purpose of why people even liked the 1 to 14 beginner lobbies in the first place, because there was no trading. It put everybody in a mostly equal place gear-wise. There's a reason why games like Escape from Tarkov and Rust servers have their highest population at wipe. And the more gear that people get further into a wipe, the population dips off more and more and more. With the most recent patch, and it felt like you really didn't even have a wipe. Finally, this is probably just my opinion. I know a lot of people agree, but it's not really like a gameplay like mistake really that they did. It's just personal preference. Merging the Highroller Goblin Caves into the regular Goblin Caves was just not good. Actually, you know what? I take it back. This was a design mistake. The mob density is designed for Highroller. It's designed for you to have good gear. It doesn't matter if the enemies aren't the stronger variants anymore. There's just too many spawn placements. There's too many enemies. It's not made in mind for a gray-geared player or white-geared player. Clearing a single room is going to take forever with a beginner no gear, and to top it off, they've reduced the number of players in the lobby from 9 to 7. So the map is huge, it's way bigger than before, and you have 2 less people in the lobby, making it harder to find somebody. This is a PvPvE game, and there's a reason that PvP is first there. People want to fight other people. Before this change, I usually ran into like 3 to 4 people minimum if I was running around all the different rooms and searching for people in the old caves. And now, you just running into 3 to 4 people is like the maximum you ever see in the new caves. It's just hard to find people. All of these reasons added together are why I think that Dark and Darker is stagnating, not growing, or, you know, the clickbait title, dying. The game's just not improving. It's getting less and less fun over time. To be fair, I've also played a lot, so this could just be burnout. And also, a lot of this can be attributed to the player base using whatever is meta at the time. But again, it's the developer's job to make sure what's easiest is also fun and non-intrusive to everybody else's gameplay. And just patch after patch after patch. There's been metas that a lot of people are using that are not fun for everybody else. Let me know what you think in the comments. Am I completely wrong on everything? Do you agree on some things, but disagree on others? Or maybe you think that everything that I've said is correct or has merit. I'd love to hear what everybody and the community is thinking. At the end of the day, I'm making the video because I do love Dark and Darker. There's not any other game like it, to the point where people are just making complete 100% copies of the game. That's how good it is. And I want the game to improve. I want more people to play it, but most of my friends have already left it and stopped playing. And recently, I haven't really been playing it a lot either. I long for the glory days when the whole squad was excited to play, and they all hopped on as soon as they could. I'm nostalgic. For 2 months ago.